Okay, yeah.
Hi there, my name's Joyce Cresswell. I am from Portland, Oregon. This is Olivia Bartlett, and she's from Berkeley. And my grandmother was an orphan, and she was born in 1897. At the age of 2, she was placed in the Fred Finch orphanage. In 1906, she was adopted from the Fred Finch orphanage by a woman named Charlotte Plater. Charlotte Plater built the Julia Morgan house next door. She built it in 1906. She adopted my grandmother in 1907. If you look at the stories about Charlotte Plater, you find out that she was a companion of Dr. Chloe Annette Buckle. And Dr. Buckle was one of the first female MDs in the United States. And Olivia is related to Dr. Buckle. Dr. Buckle was a Bartlett. Her mother was a Bartlett. And after she practiced as a nurse in the Civil War on behalf of the Union, she practiced in New England for a while, and then she moved to California. And one of the main draw to moving to California was that her first cousin, Washington Bartlett, was the mayor of San Francisco and just becoming the governor of California at the time. At the same time that Washington Bartlett was the mayor of San Francisco, Charlotte Plater's father, Eli, was the mayor of Oakland. So we believe that the two women met through these male relatives, and they became friends. So our guess is that when Charlotte decided, or perhaps Dr. Buckle decided, to adopt a child, they needed a place for that child to live. And until the earthquake, until 1906, Charlotte had been living with her father, Eli Plater, who was the former mayor of Oakland, down on Castro Street. After the earthquake, there is one newspaper article that says that she is living in a bungalow in Piedmont. The California Historical Society has a plaque next door on Charlotte Plater's home that labels it as a 1907 home. And everything that we have found is that the house was probably built in 07. In August of 08, there's an announcement in the society pages that Charlotte Plater and Dr. Chloe Annette Buckle are holding an open house at, quote-unquote, their new home at 312 Mount. So my grandmother was adopted in 1906. This big house at 312 was built in 1907. My question is, did the three of them, Dr. Buckle, Charlotte Plater, and my grandmother Helen, did they perhaps live first in the small cabin here at 336, which Dr. Buckle had built in 1896? Did the three of them perhaps live here while Julia Morgan's home was being built next door? Charlotte Plater had a lot of money from Eli Plater. And so anyway, and then my grandmother grew up in this home, 312 Mountain.
I think it's worth mentioning that Dr. Buckle initially lived at 952 14th Street, which now is in the Oak Village part of Oakland, West Oakland. It doesn't still exist, that house doesn't still exist. But we're gradually coming to the conclusion that perhaps Charlotte owned these two lots and Dr. Buckle bought, or rather built, the cabin below. And Joyce had information that they used to come up here in the summer. They'd come up with friends and hang out at the cabin in the Piedmont Hills.
Part of many of the obituaries of Dr. Buckle say that she built the cabin as a getaway for her female friends, and she would leave the key under the mat, and anyone could come up and stay in the cabin. And of course, in 1896, it was undeveloped, and it was one of the earliest developments. Gail Lombardi says she has a photograph of the two properties, so the Morgan, the Charlotte Plater house built by Julia Morgan, and Dr. Buckle's little cabin, sort of sitting side by side with nothing else around them. And I haven't seen that photograph yet. But they were really early developments on the street. So we are just trying to track my grandmother and find out where she lived at various times in her life. But Dr. Buckle herself was an orphan and was raised by two spinster cousins of hers who were not much older than she. And at the age of 14, Dr. Buckle left home and earned her way through medical school, and then became a doctor, a practicing
in
doctor.
Pennsylvania. And she's written about quite a bit in articles and books and museums about Civil War medicine, because there were not very many women doctors at that time.
Well, and she didn't practice as a doctor in the Civil War because I think that was just a little bit too hard for people to understand. And so she volunteered through the Indiana Home Guard, and she was accepted as a nurse and very quickly became the managing nurse, or the coordinating nurse for all the Union forces and their nursing in the western and southwestern part of the Union, all the way down to Louisiana.
All
So
the way down.
up and
She
down
worked
Mississippi.
up and down Mississippi
And
under
then-
Dorothea Dix.
Yes. And essentially what happened was that Dorothea Dix was trying to manage all of the nursing for the Union, and it turned out about 1863 that she just couldn't get her arms around all of it, and they needed help. And Dr. Buckle stepped in, and then she had the western half of the Union territory to manage. So she traveled up and down, and then at the end of the war, she was managing a hospital in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and it was the most modern hospital that the Union had. It was brand new. They built it during the war. And she managed nurse training and nurse deployment for the Union out of Jeffersonville. So she was, very accomplished woman. And then after the war, she practiced medicine in New England. And then she had become very interested in surgery during the war. So she went to Vienna and Paris and studied surgery for 2 years. Came back and was resident surgeon at the New England Women's